So when we looked at the numbers, it was in the hundreds of millions into the billions. And I think when you started tying in collateral crimes that are associated with these crews and these organizations that move from state to state, it was very evident that we needed to put more resources into it and not necessarily just paint it with, oh, this is an ORC case and plain and simple. No, it's a crime case. It's crime moving from state to state. It's organizations that are involved in a litany of other criminal activity. And most likely, they're being identified through various state databases, and we got to figure out how to get this information to prosecute together.
You're listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Auror, where we share actionable insights to help you reduce crime and violence in your stores.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. Bobby Haskins here, and I am absolutely excited for this podcast because I get to interview a new Auror and a really good human that I'm excited to share a little bit about his background, what he's been up to, and what he's doing at Auror. So, hey, Raul, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
Hey, Bobby. Thank you very much. That's a great intro. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being willing to, put a microphone in front of you, get on the camera, just do all of the not so fun things that, go into recording a podcast. Raul, let's get into it. Let's learn a little bit about you. So, Raul, you know how I roll. You've got a great career. You've done everything. You've got a distinguished background, but I think the audience wants to know who Raul Aguilar is outside of work and who you are as a person. So, Raul, what do you enjoy doing outside of work? Talk about that family. Give us a little bit about Raul.
Sounds good. I think the best word that describes me is just trying to be humble, Bobby. I'm very blessed. I have a beautiful family and 3 kids. After this 25-year career in law enforcement that I was very grateful to have, I spent a lot of time thinking about my humble beginnings. My mom raised my brother and I in South Texas, going to college in California, and then getting the opportunity to join federal law enforcement as a dream of mine. I have to pinch myself because it went by in a flash. What do I do outside of work? A lot of CrossFit, or old man CrossFit as I call it, in the mornings, as you and I are slacking together and talking about the day. And then once I get that done, a little bit of reflection time before I start diving into my day-to-day activities here with Auror. It's really all about family for me, and the weekends are really consumed with visiting my kids and some friends and family that they're up and down the East Coast.
Awesome. Tell the audience a little bit about their family. I got the opportunity to meet your wife a couple of weeks back, and I think I might like her more than you, man. She is just awesome. We had a ton of fun as a group down in Arizona, but talk about Raul's family.
Yeah, I'll start with her sense of humor. After meeting her for 3 seconds, she had you laughing. So
you can't make this up, everyone. She right away, she was like, "You don't look old enough to be anyone's boss." And I was like, "That's very true. I like you a lot."
Right away. Yep. Yeah. So again, great sense of humor, kind of the general of the household. 3 beautiful kids, boy, girl, all of them kind of identifying themselves in this crazy world of what they want to do with life. Really just grew the last 10 years here in Virginia. They finished high school, and then all of them are just kind of becoming young adults and expanding into this world. So we're really, really proud of them. They're still a pain in the butt. 2 of them are still on my payroll. So when the third one goes off the payroll, I think we'll have a big sigh of relief.
That's awesome. Absolutely opposite of where I'm at, Raul. I've got, 16 years before one will be off the payroll, and probably 17 for the other. So, congratulations, man. I know you're very proud of the family unit that you have created down there, and it's been absolutely awesome to get to know a few of them over the last couple of weeks. So I'm surprised, Raul, that you didn't talk about golf outside of work, because I know you know how to swing the sticks.
Yeah, so now that you bring that up, I'm a hacker. If I break 100, it's been a great day. But the more I get into competition with good friends like you and others, I might be able to drop my score a little bit. Recently, in the last couple.
Well, there's no way that I'm going to help you drop your score. Well,
put money on it. If you put money on it.
This former hockey player still has the hockey swing and loves a good slice. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so and I just like to play. It's fun to go out on the weekends with some friends, and just played a couple weeks ago and actually got a birdie. First time I've ever started the first hole and got a birdie. So I actually looked like I knew what I was doing. And the guy I was playing with goes, "Hey man, you trying to sandbag me and win some money?" And I said, "No, man, I got lucky."
Nothing like a little golf shark, huh? Just
exactly.
That's awesome. Let's transition a little bit into your background and where you were at, before Auror. I think obviously everyone knows your career at HSI and the Department of Homeland Security, but like give the audience a background. How did you end up at HSI? What did you do before HSI? And just give a little flavor of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Coming out of college in San Diego, I always had this idea that I wanted to be in law enforcement. I was always paying attention to my surroundings and kind of hanging out with the groups when you go out in college. I was always the one that was thinking, man, if something goes down, we're going to get caught. So I think I had that in my gut. So I knew I was going to go towards law enforcement. Right out of college, I started testing with San Diego PD, U.S. Customs, and kind of thinking where I was going to go. It took about a year and a half to go through the background, as typical it was back then. I worked in the private sector for about 18 months. In sales, actually, and I was doing very well at covering the accounts down in South California. And then, my background came through and everything was on path to get hired by U.S. Customs at the age of 25. Worked there for 5 years before the Homeland Security Investigations team was created under the umbrella of ICE. And then everything transitioned in 2003, and that's when it became DHS, HSI. The 25 years, Bobby, went by super fast. And I have to tell you that this gray hair is mostly earned through raising my kids, not from being at a job. The work was awesome. I loved every minute of it. Was blessed to be supported by and worked with and have some of the greatest men and women to protect our country, public servants. So for me, it was an honor to serve. And just the last 2.5 years of working on what we're going to get into here with HSI and Operation Boiling Point. That is what gave me the opportunity, I think, to move on and find such a great company like Auror.
Awesome. So obviously the last role at HSI, was very focused on supporting retailers and dealing with organized retail crime. Like, what was besides that one? Because we know anytime you can work with retailers, it's everybody's favorite role. But outside of that, like, what was your favorite role or station or, whatever at HSI, and why?
Yeah. So in my article, I mentioned the Special Operations Division, where I worked in a deconfliction center with other senior leaders from the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, and a few others, U.S. Postal. I think that was my favorite because not geographically my favorite, because I would have been like Argentina. It was great to be the boss down there and cover the Southern Coast. But the most that gave me purpose was that center. It really taught me the importance of breaking down silos, getting people to work together, and that it's not about you and your agency. It's about sharing information as fast as possible to prevent further, blue on blue incidents between law enforcement agencies, and also to get information and intelligence and evidence as fast as possible to other agencies so they can make an arrest and put bad guys in jail, right? So I think those 4 years were very humbling. There was a lot of battle scars, sometimes with my own agency for having to wear a DEA hat or an FBI hat, but I absolutely loved it. And I think it was a perfect environment for my skill set, in the sense that I can be humble in those settings and try to look at it from different perspectives and try to come to a solution to address whatever investigation we were fighting for in that center.
Awesome. Raul, last position before retiring from HSI, did a lot of work with retailers, but just talk to everyone around, like, number one, what is HSI and how did HSI become what is the leading agency for organized retail crime and addressing this problem across our country?
Yeah, sure. So Homeland Security Investigations is the largest investigative arm for the Department of Homeland Security. So many people don't know that. Over 7,000 special agents, a total of over 10,000 employees under the umbrella, mission support analysts, and we're stationed all over the world. 250 offices across the United States and over 90 countries. How did HSI take the tip of the spear on this? So we did it under the umbrella of financial crime. So at the time, I was running the financial and fraud division, and our leadership was very supportive in understanding that the organized retail crime problem set was kind of sweeping the United States coming out of COVID. I think the news media alerting to a lot of these events, and just by good support from leadership and some great opportunities to meet organizations like CLEAR and RELA and the National Retail Federation at the same time, educated HSI, and we really didn't care that the crime was a particular crime that's associated with ORC. We could pivot our 400 authorities to address any one of those. So if it was a fraud case, it could be tied to potentially a drug case, or if it was a credit card fraud, it might have also been tied to COVID relief fraud. So we had many different ways to attack it, and it just worked out that our leadership wanted to put effort into it, and then let me build my team around that. I spent a lot of time learning from those organizations and then partnering up with the financial institutions that wanted to make a difference and look at it from the money laundering angle, because we all know that the only reason this exists is for the profitability that comes with selling these products in the black market, in a brick and mortar, in a flea market, and or through the e-commerce platform. So that's how it ended up being that we started this initiative called Operation Boiling Point.
Fantastic. It's funny you talk about Operation Boiling Point. I'm sitting here fiddling with the Operation Boiling Point challenge coin that I got from you quite a few months back, and it's
in the federal government. There's never an operation, and nothing's a success until you have a coin printed.
So you have the challenge coin, yeah. So Raul, like Operation Boiling Point, everything that you all did there, to the extent you can share, like what are some of the big wins or some of those proud moments that you had coming out of standing up that team, helping retailers address this challenge? What are some of the big wins or that proud moment that you had that you can talk about?
Yeah, so the most proud that I think was the fact that we got uncomfortable and we put a message out to the community, right? So we knew that this wasn't about just putting people in jail. It was about making stores safer by alerting them that HSI was available to put these cases together, along with our federal and state partners. I think that's probably the thing that I'm most proudest about. However, we also changed the community. We had an impact in the financial industry. We put together a 50-page document with an association called ACAMS to explain the particulars of how money is moved through the banks when it relates to organized retail crime, and the potential there for identifying those threats and then identifying them for law enforcement to follow up. So I think that was probably the most impactful for the community. And then we spoke about it at the biggest events across the country, not only ones that are organized by the organized retail crime community or by retailers, but by the supply chain industry, by the cargo industry, and then absolutely the financial industry with conferences in Vegas and a few others that we attended.
When you all were initially, I think kind of how you explained standing up Boiling Point was following the money. There's a famous quote there, right? Did you anticipate or think that the problem was as large as it turned out to be in those early days?
No. So I think initially when I started doing our research with the team, HSI had actually looked at organized retail crime per se since 2009. Our assistant director testified in Congress along with 3 other federal agencies on the topic. It was really interesting to peel back the onion and see the changes from 2009 and the expansion of the e-commerce platform. So when we looked at the numbers, it was in the hundreds of millions into the billions. And I think when you started tying in collateral crimes that are associated with these crews and these organizations that move from state to state, it was very evident that we needed to put more resources into it and not necessarily just paint it with, oh, this is an ORC case and plain and simple. No, it's crime case. It's crime moving from state to state. It's organizations that are involved in a litany of other criminal activity. And most likely, they're being identified through various state databases, and we got to figure out how to get this information to prosecute together.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? You think 2008, 2009, like what happened, right, is that, you had the technology, you could resell anywhere. No longer was there, I got to go to a got to go to a pawn shop, right? Or I got to do a garage sale or anything like that. You got Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, you got eBay, you got all these different spots you can just resell. So to see that explosion, and it's just continued to accelerate. I think the interesting thing, and I remember distinctly you and I talking, probably a year ago, of like, it takes a network to defeat a network, right? And that, good old General Stanley McChrystal quote that's out there, they were working in a network, and I say these organized retail crime groups, they were working in their own network since 2008, 2009. Like, we are behind the 8 ball. And so it's interesting to see the work that you've done at HSI and how, you're really focused in on that collaboration piece and intelligence gathering. Just share a bit more with the audience around, some of how they can get involved with HSI and the benefits that are there when it comes to, it takes a network to defeat a network.
Yeah, so that's why I love that quote. I think I referenced it in my article when I got hired by Auror. It absolutely is true. It takes a network to defeat a network. That's what we said over at SOD. We also said a lot of things like one team, one fight, and I think that's what you have to do.
Ducks fly together, right, Raul?
That sounds very familiar to what our family says here at Auror. It's critical to get that intelligence shared immediately. So I think any of the platforms that HSI has put out on the ICE.gov website, you can Google and search Operation Boiling Point. There's an enormous amount of information for retailers and or for any of the police, state, local, federal, that want to share and work together. We created a way to take in some leads, work with the individual reporting those leads, and then try to find a prosecution for those teams across the country. The funny thing is, I've been quoted many times as saying, and it doesn't matter that HSI doesn't prosecute it or will prosecute it. As long as the information gets shared, and an agency is looking at it, that's all we care about. Because as you look at some of these major takedowns, it is multi-state, multi-agency, and the information that one agency holds is only a piece of the puzzle for the larger network that has to defeat it, and that's affecting our communities and making stores, absolutely unsafe for not only the shoppers, but for the folks working in those stores.
Great career, 25 plus years, probably could have just retired, gone and sat on the beach a little bit, maybe had a beverage or two, did a couple cigars, did some golf, relaxed. I don't think that's in your persona at all. So I know you and I had been talking about joining Auror for a bit, but what made you look at joining Auror? What made you look at moving from a federal agency to a tech company, and why now?
Yeah, I think once I hit the 25-year mark, it was almost like it was time to hang him up and move on to something else. I saw what Auror was doing in the community with getting information into a platform immediately and sharing that as much as it could under your privacy laws. I really liked that. I liked that the retail community was joining at a quick rate. More and more retailers were coming into the platform. And then I started doing my research with the law enforcement agencies that were either using it, had heard of it, or wanted to use it. And it felt like it was a perfect match. The deeper dive with you and the leadership it just solidified my instincts that it was a great company that treated their people really well, that had a bigger impact across the country and around the world, actually, as I saw what you were doing in the UK and in New Zealand and Australia. So I was super excited to be part of the family here in North America and continue to build that partnership and spread the word that as much as information can get put into the platform, the better it is for sharing that information, and let some of these decisions that are made by the retailers and law enforcement be data driven, and let those connect dots kind of happen through the data, and then be on this wave with you guys from the very beginning. So again, it was a perfect match and just timing in life, like I said in my article.
Awesome. I think your background has always been mission, vision, and purpose focused, right? Like that, as getting to know you more, that seems to be a foundation for what motivates you. So we're happy to have you here at Auror and aligned with, our mission, vision, and purpose. And, at the end of the day, we want to make and help make these communities safer for retailers, for law enforcement, for everyone living in these communities, because this isn't just about retail crime. this is a crime problem, and it's impacting all of the communities. Cool. So off my soapbox there. Like, as you've joined Auror, what are some of the obvious opportunities that you're focusing in on now? What are you looking at, over the next, 3, 4, 5, 6 months on how in this new role you're going to help support law enforcement, drive value to retailers? What's on your radar and what are you focusing in on?
Yeah. Besides the fact that I had to learn an enormous amount of information and how to operate so many different platforms that Auror works with, which is very humbling.
What do you mean, Raul? Like, were you using Microsoft Office for 25 years and then we asked you to figure out Slack in a couple
Absolutely.
weeks?
I couldn't even spell Slack, and then Google this, and then Bob that, and Notion that, and very humbling. But it does tell you that an old dog can learn new tricks, and every day is a learning experience. So when you see me in my as you're checking in on whether or not we can set a meeting together, if it shows a little bit of open space, that's Raul's time to dig in and learn and read as much as I can about how to communicate between the team. But I lost my train of thought. Ask me the question again.
What are you focusing on externally?
Oh, yes, that's right.
See, we got into Slack is all consuming, but yeah, externally, what are you looking at? What do you focus in on?
It's an extension of what I was doing at HSI, which I think that's why it's the perfect role. I'm doing a lot of educating on both sides. So I'm working with law enforcement to show and teach them the beautiful part about what Auror has and the information in the platform, understanding their needs. Just today, I saw another email from a particular law enforcement agency in the Midwest that was giving praises to Auror because they were able to identify a suspect in an aggravated assault and an armed robbery that had been 39 events in 20 years, according to the police, when they communicated that information. And that information came to them from a retailer. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working with them. I'm learning from the retailers to see their needs. I'm using the Orca platform that's already been established to learn from them as well, to see if there's anything that I can bring to the table in helping them understand what kind of cases they have, where they can work with other law enforcement, potentially, as I'm already connecting dots between law enforcement as well, and finding communities that need to meet each other so they can be a part of this coalition of the willing to do more. And again, like I said, it doesn't really matter to me that HSI is prosecuting these cases. I'm helping Secret Service, U.S. Postal, FBI. It does not matter, state and local. Anything I can do because of this enormous amount of information that I was able to get from the last 2.5 years of working this threat. I do have a vast amount of network, and I'm just sharing that with as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think the way that you explained how HSI just wants the leads, and so that they can spread that intelligence so that some agency, whether that's HSI or not, doesn't matter. Some agency will take action and get a prosecution moving. When I see what you're doing at Auror, that's exactly the same thing, right? You've got that knowledge, you've got that experience. You're helping retailers understand who they can talk to, where they can go to get, these cases charged, at the same time of, showing the law enforcement connections that you have, the data set that is in Auror and that they can have access to from the retail partners. Raul, I think we were on a call last week and we talked to a law enforcement agency and talked about how we have in Auror, there's 525,000 repeat offenders identified in the database just in the United States. And so if you can, as you're out there getting help for law enforcement to focus in on those individuals, that's game changing for the retail partners and for the communities.
Yeah, and even giving them some simple stats like what we put out in the Intel crime report that just went out, the 10% of the offenders are committing 91% of the unrecovered loss crime. So I think getting that information out, learning how much the license plate reader program, license plate information can help connect the dots to repeat offenders. I think all that information, as we're putting it out in our yearly report or through Orca meetings or just one-on-one, trying to validate that for them and help them understand how valuable that is and how that can be used not only to bring in other law enforcement agencies to bring the case together, but to figure out if they can share it from retailer to retailer as well. Because most of the times they're holding the holy grail of information from two competitors potentially in the same state or in the same city.
Yep. And so Raul, kind of looking forward, share with the audience what's coming up for Auror and when it comes to the retail crime intelligence space, and specifically for the law enforcement partnerships front. What can people be on the lookout for, and what's heading their way?
Yeah, so as we build out our pillars, as I get out there in the community and we create partnerships, I think the exciting parts are going to be, adding some value to the law enforcement side, the dashboards that potentially are coming down the road so law enforcement feels comfortable through the privacy rules of engagement, sharing information, educating them of how, if one partnership is done with a retailer, opening up that direct to law enforcement sharing from a retailer to police, attacking it from the community perspective first, from the local community, the local sheriff, the local police departments, the task forces, working with the organized retail crime task forces across the country as well, and then addressing it from the inside out. And then as we build out this platform, as the federal space comes in, there's going to be some incredible opportunities as we see some of the bigger cases across the country that are tying in state and federal prosecutions to take down that network in all parts of the country. So I think that's what's exciting. And then the last piece would be the availability to utilize the license plate reader program and the license plate reader initiatives as we sign on more retailers using it and figure out a way that law enforcement's comfortable with getting that information and sharing that relationship back and forth to help stop crime and recover any of these typical crimes that are happening, and try to recover some of those assets and even protect things outside of just retail crime, potentially child exploitation and or human trafficking, things that could come down the road. So really excited for that.
Awesome. I appreciate giving the picture to the audience of what's coming, the space you're playing in. Raul, I appreciate your willingness to, number one, to jump on and actually be interviewed by me. Not many people want to do that. Number two, forcing you to have to put a podcast microphone in front of you and, answer a bunch of questions. But just appreciate you, everything that you're doing for the communities that we're serving. Looking forward to seeing what you can do with the law enforcement partners, with the retail partners, and bridging this gap that's out there. So thanks for jumping on the podcast, Raul. I appreciate it. So any last parting words for the audience?
Yeah, just again, thank you again, Bobby, for the opportunity to get the message out. A lot of the job that I did at HSI was trying to hide behind the anonymity of just doing our job and not necessarily being out front. But what the Organized Retail Crime Initiative taught us was that we had to become vocal, get out to the community, speak on the topics. And I think that's just going to be an extension of doing that with Auror. So I'll be privileged to use my platform to talk to as many panels as I can, and then learn from those panels and bring back that feedback to the team and make sure that we're doing everything we can in our product to get it to the users and stop as much crime as we can. Really humbling to join Auror, and exciting. And as much as I scratch my head about the Slacks and emojis, it is an absolute ride that I love that I'm on, and I'm learning every single day by a great team that you've assembled, by the way. An incredible amount of leadership that goes into you for picking the right team and selecting the right members of this family with our other leadership. You guys have done a great job. So put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that, Raul. And for the listeners, if you're, an Auror partner, you're going to be seeing a lot of Raul in upcoming meetings. And then for the industry itself, Raul will be at all the different trade shows looking to help. And so don't hesitate to reach out to Raul. If you have questions on how to leverage, HSI, whether it's federal, state, local, any sort of law enforcement help that you need, Raul's brain is there and ready for you. So thanks again, Raul. And thanks everyone for listening in. Excited to have Raul join Auror and bring that 25 years of experience in federal law enforcement to just drive unrelenting value to the retail and law enforcement community that we're serving. So thanks all.
Thank you for listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Auror. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.